October 23, 1985. 4 Soviet diplomats have been taken hostage by Islamic Jihad in Beirut. 3 are already dead. What happened in the days between the abduction and the release of the 4th has never been fully confirmed in open-source reporting. What is confirmed, the remaining hostages came home. No similar kidnapping of Soviet citizens in Lebanon occurred again for the remainder of the Cold War. Whatever Alpha Group did, the kit they carried was built for a very specific kind of problem, and it looked nothing like what Western Special Operations Forces were carrying at the same time. Alpha Group was established by KGB order on July 29, 1974, under the direct authority of KGB Chairman Andropov. Its founding mandate was counter-terrorism, specifically hostage rescue and the neutralization of threats to Soviet state interests that fell outside the conventional military's authority to address. Estimated personnel at peak Cold War strength, 250 to 300 operators. The unit reported directly to the KGB, not the Soviet military chain of command, a structural distinction that shaped every item in its standard loadout. Where Western Special Operations units like the SAS or Delta Force were built around strike capability, Alpha was built around controlled resolution. The kit reflects that. This video covers the primary weapon, secondary weapon, uniform and load-bearing equipment, communications, optics, explosive and breaching gear, and field documentation in that order. The primary weapon that defined Alpha Group's Cold War loadout was not the AK-47 carried by Soviet line infantry. The AS-VAL was the issued primary for Alpha operators from approximately 1987 onward, an integrally suppressed assault rifle chambered in 9x39mm subsonic ammunition developed by Tochmash, specifically for special operations use. The integral suppressor is built into the barrel rather than added as an attachment, reducing overall length while maintaining full suppression at every round. Muzzle signature on the AS-VAL firing SP6 armor-piercing subsonic ammunition is assessed at approximately 130 decibels, below the threshold that requires hearing protection and well below the 160-plus decibels of an unsuppressed AK. The 9x39mm cartridge penetrates 8 millimeters of steel plate at 100 meters while remaining subsonic throughout its flight path. Before the VAL was available, operators carried the AKMS, the folding stock variant of the AKM, selected over the full-length AK for vehicle operations and close quarters work. The AKMS folded to 640 millimeters, short enough to exit a vehicle without muzzle flagging the doorframe. The secondary weapon across Alpha's operational history was the Stechkin APS, an 18-round 9x18mm Makarov automatic pistol with a detachable wooden holster that functions as a shoulder stock. Western doctrine in the same period issued sidearms as last resort weapons. The Stechkin was issued to Alpha operators as a primary close-quarters weapon in confined spaces, such as corridors, stairwells, and vehicle interiors, where the AKMS or VAL was too long to maneuver. The automatic fire mode at 750 rounds per minute was documented in training as a door breach suppression tool, not a sustained fire capability. The wooden stock holster converted a pistol into a shoulder-fired weapon accurate to 50 meters with the selector on semi, a capability no Western-issued sidearm of the same period provided. The uniform Alpha Group wore into the 1979 Kabul operation wasn't Soviet military. Here's what it actually was and why that choice was deliberate. The Alpha uniform, during the December 1979 Kabul operation, the assault on Tajbeg Palace that killed Afghan President Hafizullah Amin, was Afghan Army uniforms worn over Soviet equipment. The operational logic was entry without identification. Operators moving through Kabul streets in the hours before the assault needed to read as Afghan military rather than Soviet. Underneath the Afghan uniforms was the standard Soviet 6B2 body armor, a 3.5 kilogram vest with titanium plate inserts rated to stop 9 by 18 millimeter Makarov pistol rounds at close range. The 6B2 was not rated to stop rifle rounds at combat distances. Alpha operators accepted that limitation in exchange for the mobility it provided over heavier alternatives available at the time. For operations inside the Soviet Union, including the 1983 Tbilisi aircraft hijacking and the 1986 UFA operation, standard plainclothes attire was worn over the 6B2 rather than military uniform, maintaining cover through the approach phase before the assault began. Load-bearing equipment was the 6 SH-92 chest rig or predecessor configurations depending on the operational period, carrying 430-round magazines for the AKMS or VAL to RGD-5, fragmentation grenades on the front panel, and a GP-25 grenade launcher attachment where the primary weapon was the AKMS. The GP-25 underbarrel launcher fires VOG 25 40mm grenades to 400 meters, selected over standalone grenade launcher options because it kept the operator's hands on one weapon system rather than two. The RGD-5 fragmentation grenade has a kill radius of approximately 5 meters and a casualty radius of 20 meters, smaller than the Soviet F-1, which was carried by line infantry but excluded from Alpha's standard loadout because its 30-meter casualty radius was incompatible with hostage rescue operations in confined spaces. Communications in Alpha's Cold War loadout centered on the R-392, a Soviet Special Operations radio operating in the VHF band, encrypted, and designed to be worn under a jacket without external antenna visibility. The R-392 weighed 1.2 kilograms with batteries. Earpiece communication used a throat microphone rather than a headset. The throat mic reads vibration from the larynx rather than sound from the mouth, allowing sub-vocalized communication in noise environments and in positions where speaking aloud would compromise the operator's location. Western Special Operations units were still standardizing throat microphone protocols through the early 1980s. The 1980 Iran hostage rescue attempt, where communication breakdowns contributed to the abort decision, accelerated that timeline across multiple USSOF units. The R-392's encrypted VHF transmission had a range of approximately 5 kilometers in urban terrain, sufficient for close-quarters operations where element leaders were rarely more than 500 meters apart. A dedicated signals operator within each Alpha element managed the external communications link to the KGB command post, keeping tactical-level radio traffic off the encrypted net used by the assault team. The optics situation told a different story, and it exposed the single biggest gap between Alpha's kit and what USSOF was carrying at the same time. Optics on Alpha's primary weapons were constrained by Soviet manufacturing capability through the early Cold War period. The PSO-1 4x24mm scope, standard on the SVD Dragunov, was adapted for some AKMS configurations, but was not standard issue across the element. Its length and mounting height made it impractical on a folding stock platform in confined spaces. Most Alpha operators in documented Cold War operations carried iron sights on primary weapons. The AS-Val's integral sight rail accepted the 1P29 universal scope when precision fire beyond 200 meters was required, a 4 times fixed magnification optic weighing 0.58 kilograms, selected for its shorter overall length over the PSO-1. A designated marksman element within each Alpha team carried the VSS Vintorez, a suppressed sniper rifle chambered in the same 9x39mm subsonic cartridge as the Val, providing precision capability out to 400 meters without a sound signature detectable beyond 50 meters. Night vision capability for aimed fire on primary weapons was not standard in Alpha's loadout until the introduction of the 1PN58 and 1PN93 weapon sights in the late Soviet period, a gap of approximately a decade compared to USA Special Operations Forces units that had fielded weapon-mounted night vision from the mid-1980s onward. Explosive and breaching equipment in Alpha's documented loadout includes the MVD-57 cutting charge, a linear-shaped charge designed to cut through door hinges, lock mechanisms, and light structural members without the fragmentation pattern of a standard explosive. The MVD-57 is placed along the door's hinge line, detonated remotely, and produces a cutting jet rather than a blast wave, reducing fragmentation risk to hostages on the other side of the door. Standard breaching tools also included a hydraulic ram for interior doors and bolt cutters rated to 16mm hardened steel, both carried in a dedicated breaching bag assigned to one operator per 4-man team rather than distributed across the element. At Beslan in September 2004, Alpha and Vimpel operators used the RPO-A Shmel shoulder-launched thermobaric rocket to suppress multiple firing positions inside the school gymnasium simultaneously. The Shmel produces an overpressure effect in enclosed spaces that incapacitates without the fragmentation that would kill hostages in adjacent areas. The operational decision to use thermobaric weapons inside a building containing hostages remains contested in open-source analysis. What is documented is that Alpha operators made entry through 11 separate breach points within 90 seconds. The field documentation kit tells you what Alpha expected to find before they entered. Beslan was the operation where the target package and the reality inside had almost nothing in common. Field documentation and intelligence gear in Alpha's standard Cold War loadout included the OVN-1 Kavaksha night observation device, a first-generation image intensifier with 4 times magnification, weighing 2.1 kilograms, issued from approximately 1,975 onward. The Kavaksha was not weapon-mounted. It was handheld, used for pre-assault observation rather than aimed fire, and passed between team members during the reconnaissance phase. Each operator also carried a standardized target package, photographs, floor plans where available, and a written brief on hostage locations and captor positions. The format was standardized across KGB Special Operations units from approximately 1,980 onward following the Kabul operation, where incomplete site intelligence contributed to operator casualties during the initial breach. The package was carried in a waterproof document pouch on the left chest, accessible without releasing the primary weapon. Medical kit was the individual first aid pouch containing a pressure bandage, tourniquet, and morphine auto-injector. Advanced trauma capability was integrated at element level rather than distributed individually. The operational philosophy was that individual kit weight belonged to mission equipment, not medical redundancy. The Alpha Group kit across 30 years of Cold War operations tells a consistent story. Every item was selected around controlled resolution in confined spaces, not strike capability, not sustained combat power, not force projection. The suppressed primary, the automatic sidearm, the linear breach charge, the thermobaric option, each one points toward an operational philosophy that prioritized ending an incident over winning a firefight. A Delta Force operator loading out for the same period carried a different calculation. More firepower, more fragmentation, faster breach, higher lethality threshold. Alpha's kit accepted lower lethality in exchange for tighter control of outcomes, and the loadout enforces that trade-off at every level. The gap between that philosophy and the actual outcomes at Beslan, where 334 hostages died, 186 of them children, is the most documented and most contested question in Alpha's operational history. The kit was built for a specific kind of problem. The problem at Beslan was something else entirely. The school held 1,100 hostages across 3 buildings. The assault element was 200 operators. The thermobaric charges, the linear breach charges, the suppressed primaries, every item in the standard kit had been selected for a 4-man team resolving a small group hostage situation in a contained space. Beslan was not that. The kit didn't fail. The scenario exceeded what the kit was designed for, and that distinction is what the after-action literature has been arguing about ever since. If you were building Alpha's loadout for a single hostage rescue operation, which one item would you replace and with what? The answer changes depending on whether you're optimizing for entry speed, hostage survivability, or operator protection. And those 3 priorities don't resolve cleanly into the same kit. Subscribe. This channel documents the equipment, the operations, and the decisions behind them, without the commentary that gets in the way of the record.